provinces. Yeah, I see this.
Wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bowen Ma, BC's Minister of Emergency Management and Climate Readiness, and I'm speaking to you today from the territories of the Squamish, the Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. In the past few days, thousands of British Columbians and people traveling through our province have been impacted by heavy snowfall and extreme cold temperatures. We know that this hasn't been easy, especially with so many people traveling for the holidays. Thank you for your patience and for your compassion for those around you. I want to thank everyone who's been doing what they can to keep themselves and others safe by staying home if they can and checking in on their neighbors, especially those who are elderly or have mobility issues. During the cold weather season, EMCR provides funding for local governments to set up warming centers for people to warm up and get information on how to safely stay warm where they live. Warming centers are currently open in many communities across the province, including but not limited to Campbell River, Cranbrook, Maple Ridge, Victoria, and Vancouver. I encourage anyone who knows of someone who could benefit from these centers to check with your local community's website or social media for information. While we're expecting temperatures to start warming up in the coming days, snow is forecast tonight through tomorrow and will likely turn into freezing rain tomorrow and then rain. Freezing rain is primarily forecast in the Fraser Valley and on Vancouver Island. In the Fraser Valley, freezing rain could last up to 36 hours and may cause dangerous and slippery road conditions for drivers. Environment Canada and Drive BC have issued weather alerts and travel advisories for many areas, and I strongly encourage everyone in these areas to travel only if necessary. I know many people have plans to travel to their friends and families, but these are very dangerous conditions, and we want to make sure everyone is safe. BC Hydro is also advising that freezing rain is likely to cause power outages, particularly on Vancouver Island and in the Fraser Valley. Their crews are ready to respond to outages as quickly as possible. If you need to travel, get prepared by packing a winter survival kit, including a windshield scraper, a snow brush, flashlights and extra batteries, first aid supplies, blankets, drinking water, and non-perishable food. It is also a good idea to have a full tank of fuel before traveling. Around the home, please make sure that you have flashlights and batteries available, and make sure that your drains are clear in preparation for the snow melt and rain that is likely to come over the weekend. If you are stuck or stranded, stay in your vehicle or your home. Call 911 for assistance when needed. While freezing rain is in our immediate future, we are also looking to what's next: heavy rain. My ministry is working closely with the River Forecast Center to anticipate river levels and communicate with the public. While at this time, river conditions are not anticipated to lead to significant flooding, we will be monitoring the situation closely and are ready to ready to notify people and their communities and to assist if flooding does occur. My ministry is prepared to support First Nations and local governments who need it. On the Lower Mainland, Fraser Valley, and Vancouver Island, we have pre-positioned sandbags, gabions, which are like wall-like structures filled with sand, and tiger dams, which are stackable orange tubes filled with water. So we are pre-positioning flood assets where they are most likely to be needed. This weather could also have impacts on farmers in the Fraser Valley, who I know have already dealt with so much. And I know that Minister Alexis is working with our partners to do what we can to minimize impacts on their operations. My ministry has, like I said, pre-positioned flood assets on Vancouver Island and the Lower Mainland should any First Nations or local authorities need assistance. Thank you again to everyone who has come together to help keep each other safe. Stay safe. Our government is doing everything that we can to make sure that people are safe, kept warm, while we weather these storms together. Events like this are an example of the important coordination role of this new ministry, and we'll continue to work together to strengthen our preparedness and mitigation so that we can build a better, more resilient future together and protect the places that we call home. Thank you, and I'll now turn it over to Minister Fleming, who will be joining us virtually.
Good afternoon. I'm grateful to join you from the territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people and the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. As Minister Ma just advised, we're here this afternoon to advise the public of a serious weather event approaching the south coast of BC. This winter atmospheric river will bring heavy snow, freezing rain over the next 36 hours, and significant rainfall to the region after that. Today, I'll outline the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure's preparations in coordination with our maintenance contractors to keep our highways safe. And I first want to acknowledge the hard work of our maintenance contractors. All week, these hardworking people have been working around the clock, 10 and 12-hour shifts to deal with the winter conditions that have been hit with here on the south coast. On the Lower Mainland, over 110 pieces of equipment were out clearing provincial roads. On Vancouver Island, over 130 plows, graders, and trucks were in action, plowing over 2,400 kilometers of road. And it's worth noting and remembering that these are the very same people, the very same maintenance contractors, our BC road builders, who jumped into action last November to help us deal with the aftermath of the atmospheric river. They worked to clear highways then, to rescue stranded drivers, to put our roadways right again through a massive repair effort that surpassed all expectations. And we thank them then, and they deserve our thanks again for the difficult work they do in the worst weather situations imaginable. Now, to the weather approaching us. As stated, we're expecting a severe winter weather system starting later tonight. Our maintenance contractors are preparing for heavy snow to hit the south coast this evening. They're fully deployed with those same hundreds of pieces of equipment and have subcontractors with more equipment readied as well. Working with Environment Canada, we expect heavy snow will hit Vancouver Island, Howe Sound, Whistler, and the Sunshine Coast, the Lower Mainland, and the Fraser Valley. Accumulations will differ by locale, but we could see as much as 20 to 30 centimeters of snow over a 10 to 12-hour period. After that, as freezing temperatures rise, this snow will change to freezing rain and ice pellets, and this will happen tomorrow morning and could last well into Saturday. The duration of the freezing will depend on location, and we're watching this freezing rain event very closely as it has the potential to have a very significant impact on road conditions all across the south coast of BC, including Vancouver Island. The freezing rain is such a concern, in fact, that my ministry is strongly advising against any form of travel from tonight through Saturday. Of particular concern on the island is the Malahat Highway 1 and Highway 4 to Port Alberni. This will affect roads in the interior as well, including the western portions of the Coquihalla, Highway 1 through the Fraser Canyon, and Highway 3, the Hope Princeton Highway. Freezing rain can coat our highways in ice, and our maintenance contractors are fitting many of their vehicles with ice blades to cut through any accumulation, as ice is very tough to manage. In the interest of safety, we may close highways if necessary with short notice. I know people have plans for the holidays. They want to spend time with family, friends, and loved ones. But this is a significant weather event. Snow followed by freezing rain, and then rain. And the rainfall that follows could be extremely heavy and as much as 80 millimeters, which could result in some localized flooding. And Minister Ma has outlined some of the preparations that have been undertaken to deal with that. As always, our contractors will do their best to manage what is thrown our way. But the timing is going to be tricky to go from plowing a heavy dump of snow to laying down salt to combat the freezing rain. It will be a big challenge. And for those who absolutely must travel, You will need to plan and prepare, and we ask for your patience and to exercise the utmost caution. Drive slowly and safely according to the conditions. Do not pass maintenance equipment. They're there to keep you safe. Observe the amber lights as they work on our roads, and be fully prepared for winter conditions. This includes having proper winter tires and making sure you pack appropriate clothing and food in case you're stuck or delayed. Once we get to Christmas Day, we expect to be back in the typical rainy, temperate West Coast weather pattern. But in closing, I can't understate the significance of the incoming weather front. Rarely do we see such heavy snow followed by freezing rain and heavy rainfall. We want everyone to remain safe. That's why I'm advising against travel by road on the island and south coast and to and from the interior from tonight through Saturday unless absolutely necessary. And I want to sincerely thank all of those who are out in the worst weather, working to keep our province safe, working to keep our roads clear. They will be called upon to do so again in the coming hours as this weather event hits us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe Bobby Secon from Environment Canada will be speaking next. Thank you. Oh, is that right? Yep.
Louis.
Oh, I'll let you introduce yourself. My notes are late.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Louis Kohani. I'm a meteorologist with Environment Canada. And the following weather briefing will be provided in English, but questions are welcome in either official language, and responses will be provided in the language of the question. L'exposé météorologique suivant sera fourni en anglais, mais vos questions sont bienvenues dans l'une ou l'autre des langues officielles, et les réponses seront fournies dans la langue de votre choix. Merci. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bobby Seiko. I'm a warning preparedness meteorologist with Environment and Climate Change Canada. I'm here to talk to you about the approaching winter storm. As British Columbians know, we've been entrenched in this cold Arctic air in all parts of the province, including the south coast. We've dealt with a couple rounds of snow already, and we have the next winter storm on its way. This cold Arctic air will collide with Pacific moisture, which will be bringing not only wet weather, but also a rise in temperatures and freezing levels. We'll start off with snow tonight and into tomorrow for many parts of the south coast, 10 to 20 centimeters for most areas. There will be some areas hit harder, up to maybe 30 centimeters, especially places like Sea to Sky and the Eastern Fraser Valley. Now, there will be eventually a transition to rain. However, before that happens, there'll be the hazard of freezing rain. Now, freezing rain is a phenomenon where you have snow that melts through above freezing layer and then refreezes at the surface, creating very slippery conditions, and can also add weight to structures, causing damage to power lines as well. So this is a very hazardous phenomenon, and certainly any time that we get several hours of that, that can lead to great impacts. We're expecting that freezing rain over Vancouver Island late tomorrow morning through the afternoon. For Metro Vancouver area, it'll be starting around midday through late in the afternoon. And for the Fraser Valley, it'll start late in the afternoon tomorrow through the night and into Saturday. Now, this cold, dense Arctic air with the outflows, it's very hard to clear out. So it is possible that freezing rain can linger longer into the Fraser Valley than expected. So I encourage everybody to stay prepared to encounter this freezing rain for longer than expected, if that may be. So there are a number of scenarios with this freezing rain. It could be short as 12 hours or as long as 36 hours. So it's important to be prepared for kind of the worst case scenario. This after the freezing rain is over, like I mentioned, coastal parts of the south coast will transition to rain sometime Friday night into Saturday, and for the Fraser Valley, it'll be probably Saturday night into Sunday that the transition to rain happens. With the rain falling on cold surfaces, it can also create very slippery conditions, slushy conditions, and continue to be really hazardous for driving. So definitely encouraging people, if you don't have to travel, please don't for the next couple of days here. So I encourage everybody to keep an eye on our forecasts and alerts, stay up to date, check Drive BC, and please stay safe this holiday season.
All right, we're going to Zoom next. We have Dave Campbell from the River Forecast Center joining us on Zoom.
Great, thank you. I'm Dave Campbell, the head of the River Forecast Center within the Ministry of Forests, and just provide a bit of an update and lens in terms of the context of outlook for flood potential across the South Coast as we come into these weather events. And clearly, we can see that transition as we go through that weekend from cold weather now and into that steady warming, and it will really be at the tail end of the sort of weekend warming where we'll start to see the increases in potential for flood risk as temperatures warm up and we transition into both the rainfall and more steady snow melt. We have a fair bit of snow on the ground down to low elevations, and while it seems like a fair amount of snow, the water content within that is fairly modest. We've got about 10 to 25 millimeters of stored water within that low elevation snowpack. And that's going to start melting as we work our way through the weekend into that Saturday period as temperatures warm up. So we see two main concerns at this point. The first being as we transition through the period, seeing melt as the temperatures warm up, and the potential for localized and low-level water pooling, standing water in potential areas that have poor runoff, either because of their topography or potentially impacted by snow and ice covering up drainage structures. So really encouraging people to clean those out as we go through the event to be able to allow for natural drainage to happen. The second key factor is going to be as we come through the latter part of the weekend, additional rainfall in that Sunday and into Monday period, where we will have more accelerated snow melt up through into mid-elevations, as well as moderate to heavy rainfall. And this is the period we're most concerned about. For high flows will be that Sunday into Monday period, where we do have the potential to see high flows and the potential for minor or even moderate flooding. We're continuing to monitor the conditions as we get a better handle on the amount of rainfall in the latter part of the weekend and into next week. We are anticipating seeing a more steady period of wetter weather as we go through next week. We'll be continuing to monitor conditions throughout that period. We have issued a high stream flow advisory for the South Coast and Vancouver Island in recognition of these conditions in the early part of or the latter part of the weekend. We'll be continuing to update that with information as we continue to monitor through the weekend. So with that, I'll wrap up and thank you very much.
Fantastic. Turn it over to you now, I guess.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you to all our speakers. As a reminder for media on the phone, please press *1 to enter the queue. That's *1 to ask a question. For media in the room, please line up at the microphone provided, and please make sure to provide your full name and outlet. Media will be limited to one question and one follow-up. We'll be starting in the room today. Please go ahead.
Hi, Minister. Lisa Tebow with CTV News. This may be a question for Minister Fleming or yourself. I'm wondering if you could detail, is there anything that road crews can do to mitigate the effects of freezing rain on the highways? And maybe if you could go into a little bit of detail about what preparations are being done right now.
Sure. Minister Fleming?
Thank you. Yes, so what road crews will be doing, of course, is looking at the snow accumulation overnight and plowing around the clock to keep roadways clear, using abrasives, and then we'll have to switch as temperatures change and conditions change and icy rain occurs to salting, brining, and other de-icing materials. This is going to be very tricky, as I mentioned, and it will be very difficult to keep up with. We're also deploying different types of plow technology. Ice blades will be used to break up any icy accumulations, and I think perhaps for some further detail on this, I'll refer to Steve Surratt from the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Minister. With the conditions as they are now, as the Minister said, primarily the focus will be on plowing and abrasives overnight with the temperatures still at the freezing levels they are. What our maintenance contractors will be doing is monitoring the weather forecast very closely to find when that transition goes from snow into the freezing rain. And at that point, we'll be trying to place as much salt as possible to battle the freezing rain. However, with the prolonged nature of this event and the freezing rain, the amount of freezing rain expected, there's only so much salt that can be put down. So we do expect some very slippery conditions as a result of the prolonged nature of the freezing rain, which is a challenge that's very hard to overcome. And once it's set in, yes, the contractors use various types of ice breaking technology like ice blades to try and break it up and return the conditions back to a safe for the traveling public as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Lisa, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, so typically the process has been to only really focus on the main arteries and not so much neighbourhood roads. Is that still the case between now and, say, when the snow starts tonight? Has there been any focus on some of the smaller routes to try to clear some of that snow that's been here since Tuesday?
So I'll start with a response there and then pass it over to Minister Fleming. I should be clear that snow removal operation plans at the local level and side streets, neighborhood streets, they do exist with the local governments. And I know municipalities across the province who are experiencing high levels of snowfall, they're implementing their snow removal plans and prioritizing the streets according to the needs of their communities. But I'll pass it on to Minister Fleming to see if he has anything to add to that.
Yeah, thank you, Minister Ma. So we're coordinating with municipal governments on how to keep main roads, especially off-ramps from our highways into arterial roads in municipalities. They'll be on the same overnight 24/7 schedule that we are, applying in many cases the same types of road treatments to try and maintain traction using sand and abrasives after plowing and then moving into salt. I expect, but don't want to speak for local governments, that they will prioritize their main thoroughfares and probably not get to residential side streets as quickly. But we're going to have to also pay attention to what the freezing rain does and base deployments on that to try and keep slippery road conditions at an absolute minimum, and then pay attention to the rainfall that's expected in 24 to 36 hours from now too, to see what that does to our roads.
For our next question, we're going to Graham Wood, Glacier Media. Please go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Ma. Can you walk me through your past 24 hours? Who have you spoken to, including whether or not you've spoken to Vancouver International Airport?
Emergency management and climate readiness, we used to be known as Emergency Management BC, and now is under this new ministry. We have been in contact with with YVR. We are in contact with our federal counterparts as well. Certainly airport operations, especially at an international airport, do fall under federal jurisdiction, but emergencies don't know boundaries, and so we are in contact with our federal counterparts about how we can assist if there is a role for us to play there. Emergency management and climate readiness staff are on standby 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year to receive and respond to requests for emergency assistance from local communities. And so as an example, many communities have currently deployed warming centers that are funded through EMCR. We work with communities to make sure that when they are faced with an emergency situation that extends beyond their operational capacity to manage on their own, that we're there for them.
A follow-up.
Who else have you spoken to, though, other than YVR?
So,
That's the first question.
oh, absolutely. So our operations center is available for communities to connect with whenever they need help. So oftentimes communities will actually call right into the operations center, and that'll be done in direct coordination with them. So we do have some, let me see, I don't have a full list of the communities who have been in contact with us so far, but I believe Ian Cummings is on the line, and maybe he can give us a rundown on the communities that have been in contact with the MCR.
Yes, thanks, Minister. Ian Cunning, Senior Director with Emergency Management and Climate Readiness. When Environment Canada issued the orange alert earlier in the week that went out to all emergency managers within the province, we liaised with Environment and Climate Change Canada and on their advice determined that communities on Vancouver Island within the Southwest region, so Pemberton to Hope area, and in our central region, largely Kamloops area and in the interior, we conducted a coordination call or weather-specific coordination call, which features a weather briefing from Environment and Climate Change Canada, as well as an update from the River Forecast Centre, so our Indigenous partners and local authorities can have the best information possible in order to be prepared for the weather change this weekend. Thank you, Minister.
I understand Minister Fleming on the line would like to add something as well.
Thank you, Minister Ma. I just wanted to add that our ministry is coordinating with our public transit agencies, both TransLink and BC Transit, about maintaining service levels. The plan right now for BC Transit is to maintain operations today and keep things like Handy Dart in operation. And they'll be communicating with passengers who have pre-booked trips so that they don't have to cancel appointments wherever possible. And obviously, we're working with BC Ferries to see how they're holding to scheduled sailings. So before the storm front arrives, service levels are going to be maintained where they've been able to remain operational, and we're going to direct the public to look at both TransLink and BC Transit and BC Ferries websites for further advisories.
Yeah.
Follow-up?
For Minister Fleming, you keep saying that you have a full complement of equipment coming up, but people, I guess the public has continued to say that it hasn't been enough. What is your opinion? Do you think that we need to add more equipment for these contractors to get the especially the lower mainland highways cleared?
Right. Thank you. Well, I want to thank the road maintenance contractors again, who worked in conditions where in some cases 6 centimeters of snow fell per hour, and we're doing multiple passes on all of our highways to keep them clear with tandem plows, mobilizing additional equipment. We have all that equipment for this next storm front heading our way. There has been additional work to secure subcontractors who have equipment that can be put into clearing roads and de-icing roads. It's a huge operation. We had snowfalls that are certainly in the record books in terms of recent decades for how much snow accumulation we experienced in a very short period of time. We're heading into another overnight forecast that suggests that we'll have the same conditions. So, to have the crews ready, working through the night, mobilizing every available piece of equipment and procuring even more, and spreading and stockpiling materials so that we're ready for what's coming to us has been a massive effort, and it's been an extremely busy week for everybody who's been working on this effort.
For our next question, we're going to go to the phones. Mike Hager, Globe and Mail. Please go ahead.
Thanks for taking our questions. Do you have a ballpark number for how many community warming centers have been opened with provincial funding, and how many communities they're located in across the province?
So I'll start by saying that we are available to work with communities to open these warming centers as required for those communities. So any communities that are out there who do anticipate a need, please do call in to the EMCR operating center. But I'll turn it over to Ian Cunnings, who likely has a list in front of him.
Yes, thanks, Minister. Latest count, and anyone can go look at communities that we've been assisting on the Emergency Info BC website. But currently, and there's too many to list here today, but there are 21 communities that have indicated to us that they have opened warming centers around the province.
Did you have a follow-up?
Yes, thanks. What's your ministry's best estimate for the number of people sleeping outside across the province, and what's your message to them?
So we know that it is an incredibly difficult time for people who are currently experiencing homelessness. It is very cold, frigid temperatures out there. We ask that they seek out anyone in need of a warming center. Please seek out a warming center in your community. Your local communities will have information about where these warming centers are. The challenge of homelessness here in British Columbia is one of the priorities that our government wants to tackle, and I know that under Minister Ravi Kahlon, a lot of work has already been underway in the last 2 weeks that he's held this file. We are moving quickly to try to build more housing for people who need it, more emergency supports for people who need it as well. I don't have an estimate in my ministry, or at least right now, that I have available. I don't know, Ian, if this is something that you also have available to you, but if not, then we'll follow up with BC Housing and get that information for you. It's okay, Ian, if you don't have it.
That would be correct, Minister. We would need to follow up with BC Housing. They would have that information.
So Mike, let us follow up with BC Housing and get a response to you after this closes.
For our next question, we're going to Sarah McDonald, Global News. Please go ahead.
Hi there. This might be for Minister Fleming or Ma. You've spoken about the contractors, the people working so hard on the roads. We've seen shortcomings, though, in the past few days and weeks with the snowfall, specifically when it comes to main road operations. We've seen major arteries that still are not clear of snow at this point. Are you confident your contractors are going to be able to handle these weather conditions as you've been speaking about? Have they been operating to expectation in recent weeks? And is the province reassessing its contract with the road maintenance companies that are tasked with keeping arteries clear?
Minister Fleming, I'll let you lead off on that one.
Great, thank you. So what we are doing is coordinating with all of our road maintenance contractors, making sure that the ministry can provide any additional support, making sure we have sufficient material stockpiled, procuring additional equipment where available with subcontractors, as I mentioned. It has been very difficult, given the rate and pace of snowfall, to stay ahead on plowing in some areas. And, we haven't had a break over the most recent effort to clear our highways. So we return and do additional passes. Every person available in the road maintenance contractors staff has been out working, and they've been working extended shifts to try and get ahead of an event that was very difficult to get ahead of. We've had a calm day to get back and replow and continue to maintain our highway systems. We've urged the public to reduce any unnecessary travel so that plows aren't stuck behind congestion. And we thank the public for heeding those warnings and adjusting their travel schedules accordingly. That's the kind of cooperation we're going to need over the next 24 to 48 hours so that we can keep our roads in the safest conditions possible, because the new challenge is going to be freezing rain, which we have not had in any of our weather systems so far this winter season. Those are coming. Those produce additional challenges and different strategies on how to keep roads free of ice and as safe as possible. And I'll ask Steve Sirrett if he would like to add anything additional that I may have neglected to mention.
Thank you, Minister. The only thing I will add is that compact snow on our highways, especially during the winter and especially during the temperatures we're seeing, is an acceptable standard and state for our highway conditions. Once you add the snow, the freezing temperatures that we're seeing and the amount of traffic volume that they impact, the focus for our contractors at that point is to make sure the traction is sufficient and safe, and not necessarily removing it. That can be very challenging once you get into these type of temperatures, and it takes time in order to get to that point where you can bear them off to black highways. So not just simply because there's compact snow on the roads does not mean it's not meeting a specification or a safe traveling. It is up to the drivers to make sure they're making the appropriate decision, driving safely to the conditions that they're experiencing.
Sarah, did you have a follow-up?
I I do. Yeah, we've seen major highways that still aren't clear of snow. And I mean, arguably, most people who are paid to do a job, if it's not done sufficiently, will no longer have that job. So Minister Fleming, how do you respond to taxpayers who say that not enough is being done with their money by the contractors who are being paid to clear the roads and keep them safe? And once again, just want to follow up, are you reassessing your contracts with main road operations?
Thank you. We have, am I unmuted? We have performance standards that are adhered to year round for road maintenance contractors. We have an incentive payment scheme that evaluates how well contractors perform throughout the year, and we will continue to do that, after this storm event and into the next part of the season. We do that year round, as I mentioned. Main Road has been great at making sure that their workers are available and out full force, round the clock, adjusting schedules, doing their best to get ahead of a weather system that does not permit bare highway conditions, as Steve has just outlined, given the rate of snowfall, but gets us to the contract specifications about how much compact snow can be allowed on highways. We do have some bare highway conditions, though it should be mentioned, both in the Lower Mainland and in the province. We've got a significant dump of snow ahead of us. We're going to have to go again, plow, put abrasives down, de-ice, and manage this weather system. That's why we're advising the traveling public today to reduce all unnecessary travel. And I know that's a hard decision to make because people have visits that they've been looking forward to that are planned for the holidays, but we want people to be safe and exercise additional caution.
For our next question, we're going to Tyler Olson, Fraser Valley Current. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. To Minister Fleming, many people commute on highways, especially in the Fraser Valley, and are scheduled to work tomorrow. What would you say to any employer who expects their workers to commute between, say, Chilliwack and Abbotsford tomorrow morning before any freezing rain starts?
Yeah, I think those are the kinds of things that people need to take preparations, given what the forecast is and how serious it is about what accommodations can be made. So people who have good vehicles with good tires on them, who absolutely need to travel for work purposes, who have essential businesses they need to do to conduct and commute, will need to consult Drive BC, look at what the weather conditions are. This warning is for people to make adjustments as they can. We want people to reduce travel where they absolutely can so that our roads are not seeing any stranded motorists. We want to reduce any collisions and keep our roads as safe as possible and allow equipment to get out and get at what the weather is going to throw at us over the next 12 to 24 hours.
Tyler, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, thanks. To Minister Ma, we've seen many extreme weather episodes now over the last 2 years, and some weather models seem to have done better at predicting them than others. Are you confident that Environment Canada's models are sufficient to capture and communicate the risk of extreme weather we're seeing?
I think we're communicating the extreme risk of the weather that we're seeing right now by communicating to the public that what we're anticipating over the next 24 to 36 hours may result in extremely icy conditions. We're asking people to be extremely cautious when they leave their home and go out to travel. If they don't need to travel, please don't. I understand that these are very difficult decisions to make, but wherever you go, we want you to be safe and we need you to get there safe. And if the best way to do that is to stay home, we're asking you to do that as well.
For our next question, we're going to Lisa Eusda, City News. Please go ahead.
It was mentioned at some point that highways could be closed. I wonder if you could mention which ones are most likely, considering where the weather is going through, if you can possible, that people should keep their eye on in particular.
Minister Fleming?
Yes, thank you very much. I mentioned Highway 4 between Port Alberni and Tofino. It's going to be very tricky. We also expect the freezing rain to be fairly severe out in the Fraser Valley on Highway 1, Highway 7, and Highway 11. We're going to have to continue to update and advise and see what conditions materialize, how much snow accumulates overnight, how the weather changes as it's expected to on Friday. But those are some of the areas of concern. I'll ask some of the weather forecasters who have it quite well mapped out where they expect different levels of snow and freezing rain to happen throughout the South Coast region to maybe add a little bit of commentary to that. And Steve, if you wanted to add anything else on advisories that are pending on highways right now and the condition of the Coquihalla at this time in the afternoon.
Sure. Why don't we start with Bobby?
In terms of the highways that will be most impacted by the weather, of course, we have the heavy snowfall and, as mentioned, places like Malhat and in through the Port Alberni area, and especially sea to sky. That's an area that we're really watching closely. They could get a lot of snow, so anybody traveling between Whistler and Metro Vancouver, it could get quite challenging to get from one place to the other. So that's definitely on our radar for tomorrow. And then, of course, all our routes, coastal passes between the Fraser Valley and the interior, all those will be impacted quite heavily by snow. And then the freezing rain as well. That's, we're really looking at that eastern Fraser Valley. We know in the past we've seen sections of Coquihalla especially, and even Allison Pass, where they can get the freezing rain, causing extremely dangerous conditions on the slippery road. So we definitely want to exercise caution in those areas especially, but anywhere that you're traveling on the South Coast for the next 2 days.
And Steve, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, thank you, Minister. Yeah, I'll add on a few of the other highways. So yes, the Coquihalla is an area where our contractors are focused right now, actively working to push snow back and isolate some of the compact we're experiencing out there in preparation for the storm coming. We are expecting to see some freezing rain on the southern and western end of that highway, along with the canyon and Highway 3 in the Allison Pass, where we're also instituting black ice protocol, making sure lots of salt's in the area and equipment's in the area. So that's our immediate focus over the short term. And then I'll just add too, like as this storm starts to push further into the interior, our contractors are deploying all through the area, expecting some possibility for freezing rain further into the interior. And as temperatures warm, avalanche conditions are also expected to rise, and anticipating some closures for avalanche control. But those aren't expected until later into the weekend or early next week as this storm sort of progresses. So continue to check Drive BC for the latest updates, because that will be the most current information.
And Lisa, did you have a follow-up?
Nope, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. For our next question, we're going to Benoit Ferradini, Radio-Canada. Please go ahead.
Oh, hi, and thank you. My question was for the French spokesperson from Environment Canada.
Question first, and we'll bring him up.
Parfait. Ma question est, pouvez-vous nous répéter quelles sont les prévisions pour la pluie verglaçante, où et comment ça va arriver dans la province?
I don't understand that. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Oui, bonjour. On s'attend à la pluie verglaçante pour le Grand Vancouver et aussi pour la vallée du Fraser. Ça va être demain. Et ça pourrait durer plus longtemps dans la vallée du Fraser. Donc, cette nuit, on s'attend à de la neige. Et demain, ça va être de la pluie verglaçante et aussi du grésil. Et vendredi soir aussi, ça va être de la neige et de la pluie verglaçante et du grésil. Et puis, comme les températures vont augmenter, samedi, la précipitation va être de la pluie. Il pourrait toujours avoir un peu de neige dans la vallée du Fraser, mais les précipitations vont se changer en pluie. Donc la pluie verglaçante, ça va être demain et demain soir. Et donc il pourrait avoir des conditions quand on voyage, ça pourrait être dangereux avec la pluie verglaçante.
Benoit, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, in French again. Pour vous, en tant que météorologue, et quand vous voyez l'histoire de la province, à quel point ces événements qui arrivent aujourd'hui, demain et après-demain sont normaux ou anormaux?
Oui, donc c'est un événement qui s'est passé dans le passé déjà. Donc ça arrive surtout dans la vallée du Fraser, c'est un endroit où il y a eu déjà de la pluie verglaçante. Vers Abbotsford et Chilliwack et Hope sont des endroits où historiquement il y a eu de la pluie verglaçante. Donc c'est arrivé déjà dans le passé des événements comme celui qu'on va voir demain.
Thank you, everyone. That's all the questions we have for today. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
For taking those.